Oh my word. Can I just say I am so excited about what I'm about to show you? Because I have been thinking about escape rooms a lot this summer and trying to figure out how do I use escape rooms in the classroom because my kids love them. I had designed one escape room using just like it was a physical escape room with actual locks that I'll show at some point on a video, and the students went wild for it. And I've designed a few escape room challenges like digitally that I've put here on YouTube. But all of these things were used as review. And so I kept thinking, well, why are we just using this as review or a formative assessment? Why can't we use escape rooms to teach content? I keep looking for new ways to teach content because we've moved to a block schedule. And like I've mentioned before, nobody wants to hear me talk for an hour and a half. So I've been trying to think of various ways to reach different learning styles and to provide my students with solid content. And I finally developed an escape room that focuses not on just reviewing information that they've already learned, because who's got time for that, but on teaching them the actual content. And I think it does a better job than I would have done lecturing to my students, which makes me over the moon happy. So I'm going to spend some time, I'll walk through the escape room so you can see the student experience, and then on the future videos on this playlist I'll actually show you how I made that escape room so that you can translate it into your own content as you wish. All right, so one of my favorite things, and I guess one of my students' favorite things to cover in American history is the Indian Wars, that period of time in American history between the Civil War and 1890 when the U.S. military and Native Americans started fighting. There's a lot of different battles, and so I wanted my students to understand the cause of the Indian Wars, some of the major conflicts, and then the unfortunate results and the significance of the Indian Wars. And so I've done this through Google. This is all set up. This is a Google site with Google Forms. And one of the reasons I've done it this way is I want students to be able to come back and review this material. So this is in place of a textbook reading or in place of lecture notes. I've condensed it all here into a format that they can use. Let me get rid of that for us. Okay, so this is what they would see when they open up the site. It has the Indian Wars. It has a very short introduction. One thing that I want them to understand is the Indian Wars were really started by white greed. With mining strikes, the discovery of gold and silver led white Americans to want to overtake native land. And so I give them this brief intro there, like the beginning of the story. And then they'll see a map that looks like this. And then down below, they will see this form, and it has all of the questions that they need to know. Now, one thing I did, it starts with what caused the Indian Wars, and then the battles go in chronological order. So Sand Creek Massacre, there's one that it doesn't tell them what battle, they'll get to it though. Battle of Little Bighorn, Chief Joseph's Rebellion, Battle of Wounded Knee, and then after the Indian Wars. And so all of that's going to go in order. They don't have to necessarily fill it out in order, but the reason I did it that way is so that when they go back and study this, they would know chronologically, it would be easy for them to see chronologically how each thing fit together. And so that's what they would see on this main form. Now, if they scroll over, you see that the cursor changes in certain places because I have embedded links into here. So I'm going to start over here with the cause of the Indian Wars. And it takes them to this page. What caused the Indian Wars? They're going to see a link up here at the top. And then they're going to have a brief reading about what caused the Indian Wars. Now, this comes straight from a textbook. I cite it there for them, and so I've taken like that little portion out. And then down here I put things you need to know because I want them, this is an important section for me that if they go back and study, this is kind of like a built-in study guide. But what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to click right here, and it's going to ask them if they want to open a copy. It says make a copy. Okay, and so here's some questions. And you can see, you can tell how many letters things are. Questions that they're going to need to answer based on the reading that they've done right here. And I put right answers here and write them lowercase. So white spread or spread. The answer is disease. And you see, once they get the right answer, it has a color. If I had said white settlers spread joy, the color would not change. But when they get the right answer, it shows them a color. So I'm going to just fill these out really fast so that you can see what they are. Okay, so here we have green, blue, orange, yellow, and red. And if they go back to their main page, down here, what caused the Indian Wars? It's a color combination. And so, what was it? Green, blue, orange, yellow, red. There we go. And you can see that up until that point, oh, it didn't even let me do that, did it? I was going to say, when you put in the wrong answer, at first it will give you like a little warning thing at the bottom. Now, Sand Creek Massacre, they can actually go up here. Yeah, get rid of my others. They can go up here, and they can actually see on the map Sand Creek Massacre. Now, one of the reasons I chose to use a map here is because I've realized that my students don't have great map skills. I've realized that their teacher doesn't always have great map skills, if I'm really being honest. And to have a geographical understanding that this wasn't just like one little spot of America, but this was all over the nation, I think that really helps them have a visual. So I wanted them to be interacting with a map. They don't realize they're getting map skills, but they are. And I could honestly, even on a midterm or final exam later, put a map and ask them to label certain places. Like they could go back and study this. But they'll see Sand Creek Massacre right here. And so they can click on it. And that takes them here. Now this is me. I did a brief write-up on the Sand Creek Massacre based on my own research from various sources. Put it in language that they could understand. And then I give them some primary source accounts, because if you have not read the sources on the Sand Creek Massacre, they're disturbing, but they're very vivid. And so I give them the primary source accounts, the significance, which my students know is the big deal. And then they see this right here. Initials of the person who said the massacre was righteous. That was actually Teddy Roosevelt. Natives who refused to go along with the treaty. And so they're going to have to fill in, once again, the words to help them make sure that they have understood the content on the Sand Creek Massacre. But this time it's a little different. They just see this image. And if you go back to Sand Creek Massacre, it says Sand Creek Massacre was the blank of the Indian Wars, all caps. They're going to get a series of letters, like that's a T, that's an S, over here's an R. Those letters, they try to put them in, like TSR, they go, it says, did you try unscrambling? And so they're going to actually have to unscramble the words or the letters that I gave them. In fact, there's another. This is what all the letters would look like. But if you unscramble that, it would be start. And that takes the error message away, so they know they got that right. Okay, so the next one, they're probably not going to get this in order, but the next one has to do with what's called the Fetterman Massacre on the Bozeman Trail. Now, the word Bozeman is up here, but it's also down here. In fact, I actually probably going to change this and say during the Fetterman Massacre, natives tricked American soldiers with, just to give them a clue, because if they didn't see Fetterman up here, they could Google it and know that it was related to the Bozeman Trail. So I've already found one little thing I'm going to tweak. But Fetterman's Massacre is right here. Now this one, I linked an article from history.com, History Channel, one of those This Day in History things. I like those because they are condensed, they're pretty concise, and they give a lot of great information. And so they're going to see this article. They can scroll down and read. And then if they keep scrolling, which I need to cut off some of that, they'll see one more of these. Once again, we have this kind of thing where you see the words and you see the letters. And, oops, let me go back. And once again, they're going to have to unscramble. At some point, I might consider doing something different there. But what I liked about this is I want to make sure that they're not only reading, but they're knowing what they need to pull from it. One thing I've noticed about a lot of escape rooms is that the puzzles are fun, but ultimately they don't test the students' knowledge of the content. And so I've watched my students go through some of these escape rooms, and they try to go as fast as they can because the goal is to beat other people. And so they're going so fast, they're not actually thinking. Whereas this, in order to go as fast as you can, they're going to have to go all the way back up here to this article and actually search for that information. And I will say a quick point on embedding an article. You can embed as much of it as you want, but depending on their screen size and whether they have it full screen or smaller screen, it's going to look different. So when I had this on full screen, it cut off right here. But somehow, now that I've adjusted it to make this video, it's showing all of this extra stuff, which I guess you could say is just distraction to try to trick my students, but I really didn't want it to be there. So that's something to play with a little bit, but anyway. So, but once again, I have these questions right here, and then I just saw something else I can change, but not going to worry about that right now. So then we have Battle of Little Bighorn. And there it is, Little Bighorn right there. So students come here. Once again, it's something that, this is an intro that I wrote because I think Custer is a fantastic figure. He's so interesting to study. He was very polarizing, very controversial, really into himself, very egotistical. And so I love, as much as I can, getting into the biography of the people that we study, not just what they did, but who they were, because it adds so much color. So I give them this biography of Custer, and then I have embedded a video from the History Channel once again. This is only 4 minutes long, the Battle at Little Bighorn. So it gives, especially for the guys, it'll give them something really interesting that's not just reading, it's a break from the reading, but the reenactment will help it come to life. And then what they're going to see is a series of questions. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 of those questions they can answer based on the reading part that I wrote, but 2 of those they actually have to watch the video all the way through to know what happened. So they can't skimp out on any of that. They actually have to learn the content. And if you go back to the page right here, they're going to see, okay, my answer, I could put a hint that says numerical lock, because that's what it is, but hopefully they would also just figure out that, okay, 2, 1, 2, 3. If they just use the numbers, they'll get the right answer. All right, so for Chief Joseph's Rebellion right there, they're going to come up and you can see Chief Joseph's Rebellion. And so when they click on that, they're going to once again see something I have embedded. This is from PBS. I've embedded this in here so they can read about him. And this is one, I put this in because one of my classes reads his surrender speech. And I might make all of my classes do that. It's very short. You can find YouTube reenactments where like people have read or performed that speech. I think you might even be able to find him reading or him giving that speech. I'm not sure. I'll have to look some more. And so that might be something that I embed in the future. I've got to think through that. But I definitely like, since one of my classes has to, my dual credit class, I like having them have this background on who he is. And really, the only thing that I care that they know is this right here. That it was, he led his group in one of the most brilliant military retreats in American history, 1,400 miles. And they had to surrender when, I think it was like 40 miles from their goal. And so, yeah, and here it gives like a little brief snippet of the speech that he gives. So they see this, And then here's this link right here, and I'll probably, as I'm tweaking this, I'll probably move this doc up to the top so they see it first. But once again, so I'm going to make a copy. And this is something I've got to give credit where credit is due. I found from another YouTuber, from another teacher. It is a cool decoder thing right here. So if they move this decoder over, they can decode this, which it says, you know, how many miles did the Nez Perce Indians retreat under Chief Joseph's leadership. I think that's just the coolest thing. So they use this to see what question they have to answer, and it asks how many miles. And so if we close that out, we can go back to down here. They went 1,400 miles. You can see they got that right. Now we're at the last battle, the Battle of Wounded Knee, which is right here. So I give them a brief intro about the Go stance, which is what is kind of the catalyst for all of this. I have embedded a YouTube video of the Sioux Go stance. Now this is, it's kind of cool if you actually watch this. It's from YouTube. It's got some fun music. But you can see this is a Buffalo Bill reenactment when they were, and we're going to learn about Buffalo Bill in class, so I like showing them that. But they can actually see a visual from Buffalo Bill's show as the Sioux are reenacting this dance. A brief conclusion of this battle. There's some actual photographs from that, a quote to kind of end it off, and then they're going to see this. It's this. I created this in Microsoft Word. It's just a brief chart, and they're going to see a series of questions underneath. And so you'll see it says start. This is a directional lock. So the Battle of Wounded Knee involved which Indians, and they have to choose to go up, down, left, or right. So was it the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Arapaho, or the Sioux? And then once they're here, you know, what dance prompted the battle? Was it the spirit dance, the creek dance, or the ghost dance? And so they need to answer the questions and move their cursor accordingly, and take note of where they're going, like what directions they go. So let's see, we're going to go back down here. ULL. There we go. That's the combination for that. They went up, left, left, up, up. And then there's the after the Indian Wars. Now, it's funny, the cause right here is a little bit trickier, so they're going to have to find it by using their cursor. Most of my students should know I love the S word. The S word in my class is significance. So after should be significance. This is something that was not on the map in the beginning. I added this box and I put this hyperlink in. And so it will lead them here. And I want them to understand that after the Indian Wars, the controversy, how there were Americans who were for it, a lot of Americans who thought this is completely inhumane. And so they passed the Dawes Act, but the Dawes Act was in and of itself fraught with problems. And so there is a brief reading on the Dawes Act. And then, oh my goodness, they see this thing. This is a maze. And they're going to have to figure out their way through the maze, but as they do, they will see a question emerge that they're going to have to answer. So it says, which ones are true of the Dawes Act, is essentially the question, and then use those numbers for your code. So they will understand what they're supposed to do after they find their way through the maze. This is one of those things that you can generate online, and it's almost easier if they print it off, or even do a screenshot of it. That way they can use a highlighter and to trace the exact letters that they need. But then underneath, there is a series of hashtags. Kids love hashtags these days. So they have to figure out which of these hashtags are true of the Dawes Act, which ones are not. And the hashtags that are true, those are the numbers that they use for their code. at the end. So let's see, 3, 4, 6, and 7. So I'm going to go back down here. 3, 4, 6, 7. They can select next, and they like The Office, so I put congratulations, now get back to work. And they can submit. Another thing I'll probably do is have them put, like, have one more thing maybe here before they submit it where it's like group members' names, since they're going to work on this together. But here's why I love this. Through the whole thing, they had to learn the content. They couldn't make it through any of the puzzles without actually reading the readings that I put up or watching the videos or whatever it might be, and learning things. And when they go back and study this, not only do they have the map, so that gives them the visual, but they have all of the text for all the readings. They've got everything right there, so they can go back and look at it. But all of the questions that they're having to answer to come up with their codes, that is their study guide. That's what I need them to know. So they can go back and do this over and over and over again and use this as an interactive study guide, essentially, to be able to know what they need to know about the Indian Wars. So I hope you enjoyed this. I am so excited to pilot it with my students this year. I'm hoping that this will take about 1 block period. And the nice thing about this is I figure that what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand them sheets that they'll have in class. So it'll actually have information, like spots where they can take down notes and maybe even write what clues they come up with. So let's say a group is working on this and they're going a little bit slower, because I have some kids, who are slower readers or have learning challenges that they're facing against, or maybe just weren't as focused that particular day, and they don't get through all of it in the class period. They can still go home and access this from their home to complete it, and I'll know that they got it done when I see that pop up on the Google form that they have submitted something, when they put their name in. Now, you might say, okay, well, they could cheat, right? I mean, yeah, they could even find this YouTube video and know all of the codes. That defeats the purpose, because ultimately there is going to be a test. This is the study guide for it. This is the information that they need. So it's really in their best interest not to. I don't know necessarily if I would take a grade on this. I probably wouldn't. If I did anything, it would be a participation grade. Just how well are you staying focused in class? Are you staying on task? That kind of thing. Because for me, it's not about whether you got it right on the first try or how long it took or any of that kind of stuff. It's, are you learning the material? Are you interacting with it? Are you talking about it? And usually when I put stuff like this in class, like when they read the Nez Perce retreat, for instance, it's like, whoa, like you hear them talking about it. Whoa, look at that. That's crazy. And I'll even have kids like Googling on the side to find out more information. That's what gets me excited, and that's what they can't do during a lecture, and that's what they're probably not going to be prompted to do when just reading the textbook. So to me, this is the best of both worlds. Like I said, if you want to see how to construct one of these for yourself, follow this playlist, and I'll have short videos for how to do each different puzzle.